Hello Perfect Game softball officials, and welcome to another video in our training development series. Today we are going to discuss courtesy runners and look at some of the rules behind it, as well as how to annotate it correctly on a lineup. As we look to the Perfect Game softball rulebook, courtesy runners may be utilized in all playing divisions with the exception of the Gold Division. The offensive team may utilize a courtesy runner for the pitcher and or catcher of record at any point after the pitcher or catcher attain a base, except by substitution. Remember, teams are not required to use a courtesy runner, and teams shall utilize a player as a courtesy runner in the following order. First, an unused eligible substitute must be used. Then, the second option, the last completed at bat, or LCAB, may be utilized as a courtesy runner. The same player may not be utilized to run for both the pitcher and catcher in the same half inning. And finally, the last completed at bat designation shall be defined as the player farthest away in the batting order. The LCAB shall skip anyone currently on base, the pitcher and catcher of record, and anyone who has courtesy run for the other position in the same half inning. Let's go to some examples. In our first example, the team is going to be batting a traditional lineup with 10 batters occupying the batting order. This means we will have an EP. Now, let's look at if we were to courtesy run for pitcher Scarlett Johansson. First, we must use an unused eligible substitute. That can be numbers 44, 2, or 77 because they have not yet entered into the game in any capacity. Let's look at how we would annotate that on the lineup. Let's assume the coach wants to bring number 44, Carrie Fisher, into courtesy run for the pitcher Scarlett Johansson. To annotate on the lineup, I would write the number of the courtesy runner on the line next to who they are courtesy running for, put a CR symbolizing courtesy runner, and put the inning corresponding to what inning they are courtesy running for that individual. Let's remain with the assumption that it is the second inning. And the catcher, Kim Kardashian, gets on base. The coach wants to courtesy run for the catcher. Only number 2 and number 77 would be eligible to courtesy run. In order to courtesy run, the coach must elect to choose number 2 or number 77 to enter to courtesy run for the catcher. To annotate number 77 courtesy running for the catcher, we would write number 77 CR to symbolize courtesy runner and the inning that it took place. Our next example is another traditional lineup. However, it will annotate that we have not yet entered any courtesy runners, but you will notice that we have entered all of our substitutes. According to the Perfect Game softball rulebook, even though that the team has entered all of their eligible substitutes, they still will have courtesy runner option by LCAB or last completed at bat. If the pitcher, Carrie Fisher, got on base and the coach wanted to courtesy run for her using last completed at bat, the first option would be Blake Lively, provided she is not currently on base. Here is how we would annotate that. We would write the number of the player courtesy running, number 5, a CR to indicate courtesy runner, and the third inning to symbolize what inning we are currently in that the courtesy runner took place. In our next example, we have a traditional lineup where the pitcher and catcher are batting back to back. Now, as we see, all of our substitutes have been entered into the game. Let's say the catcher, Dolly Parton, gets on base. Who would be the appropriate LCAB option for courtesy runner? Provided they are not on base, there are two options to courtesy run for last completed at bat for the catcher, Dolly Parton. That would be either the pitcher, Scarlett Johansson, or the EP, Blake Lively. The reasoning behind this is for the last completed at bat, and because both the pitcher and catcher can be courtesy ran for. If we were to courtesy run for the catcher, the pitcher may be skipped in regard to entering in courtesy running for the catcher, and that would go to Blake Lively, the EP. In our next example, we see a traditional lineup with eligible substitutes. We see that substitutes number 2 and number 77 have been entered into the game. And Number 44 has been entered to courtesy run in the first inning for Dolly Parton, the catcher. Let's assume that is still the first inning when the pitcher, Scarlett Johansson, gets on base. The offensive coach calls time, approaches the plate umpire, and requests to put number 44 in to courtesy run for the pitcher on base. The plate umpire should deny this request. 44 has already courtesy ran in the same half inning by running for the catcher. By rule, the same courtesy runner cannot run for both the pitcher and the catcher in the same half inning. In this scenario, can the coach still have a courtesy runner other than number 44? The answer is yes. By using last completed at bat, the coach can still courtesy run for the pitcher. They would then go to the last completed at bat, not currently on base, which may be Blake Lively. If Blake Lively is not currently on base, here is how we would annotate her courtesy running for the pitcher. In our final example, we are going to see a team roster batting. This will mean they will have no substitutes. As you can see, we have runners at first, second, and third base. The coach calls time, approaches the plate umpire, and wants to courtesy run for the catcher. Who would be the proper courtesy runner to courtesy run for the catcher in this scenario? The answer, using last completed at bat, number 22, Dolly Parton, would be the correct courtesy runner to run for the catcher in this scenario.